not coming to each other, begging with our empty cups out, demanding that she fill my cup and demanding that she meet my needs is unfair and is kind of unrealistic and can be destructive to place the responsibility for your happiness on anybody other than yourself.
So this is going to be a fun one, right? This is the topic I've been waiting to touch on for a while, but I didn't try to force it. I didn't try to rush it. Just let some more things come out first and kind of let the wave go by. I probably should have jumped on it sooner, but I just didn't want to force the topic. So what I want to talk about here is Cup Theory Part 5, Will and Jada, right? I might think of a different, subtopic, right? But this is how it goes right here, right? See, first thing we need to understand is the sexual polarity quadrant. What a low cup is, what, an abundance mindset versus a survival mode, right? A scarcity mindset. Very important things to understand. Because when we're talking about the sexual polarity quadrant, cup theory is a big part of that. And honestly, I think Will Smith was the first person that I heard express something that resembled the cup theory, right? Don't come to me expecting me to fill your cup. And there's truth to that. And that actually took a lot of growth to him to get to that place of understanding that. But what you got to understand is that there may be some shit you got to deal with if you're dealing with somebody who has a low cup in the first place, and he also had a low cup to a certain extent because of the mindset that he took towards dating and relationships, right? So a lot of the mindset that it seemed that he expressed about how he approached relationships was from a masculine submissive stance, which is a transactional give to get relationship where there is no clear understood leader. It's understood as an equal partnership. Now, something to understand about equal partnerships is that most of the time that's not the case. There's always somebody who loves somebody more. There's always somebody who tends to be in a little bit more control. Some people may have more control to sexual access. Somebody may have a higher drive, right? Somebody may be in more control of the non-sexual aspects of the relationship. And oftentimes how relationships may work is a man may be in a little bit more control of the non-sexual aspects of the relationship, while the woman may be in a little bit more control of the sexual aspects of the relationship. And this often creates power struggles, right? Now, I can't say for sure that that's what happened with them, but I'm going to break this down some, right? So the traditional marriage ideal or concept or model is one predicated on gender roles being used to synthesize true sexual polarity into the appearance of it, to maintain structure, build wealth, establish a family, and be acceptable to social norms, repressing the sexual and emotional aspect of human nature to the betterment of society. However, in a day and age for individuals who have been sexually or emotionally overstimulated compared to what they will receive from or feel about the partner they choose to be with, whether in action or in unrealized fantasies, by media, family, friends, or social programming in general, this pressure to be in love with an individual leads to feeling psychological reactants, which will feel like a prison and make it nearly impossible to happen, especially when the idea of being 100% equal in all specs is heralded as the peak idea of what it means to be in a healthy relationship. Not even knowing the methods of maintaining and sustaining that polarity is readily known and acknowledged as socially acceptable, right? I know that's a mouthful, but there's going to be a lot of mouthfuls in this video. So just go ahead and prepare yourself. If you have to take some notes, take some notes. So understand that before they got into that relationship, Jada was already sexually overstimulated, right? Having had an insatiable sex addiction, which she admitted on her Red Table Talk.
My grandmother taught me about self-pleasuring because she wanted me to know that that pleasure was from me. And she taught me at 9. I think I had a sex addiction of some kind. Yes, that everything could be fixed by sex.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
As well as having a romantic fantasy and a limerence that she didn't get to fully actualize with Tupac, a man who died. So that means that Tupac has been fighting and competing against a dead man for the better part of the last 25 years.
Sorry. He was, it was beyond friendship. for us, you know, as far as just, it's really difficult to explain because the type of relationship we had, you only get that once in a lifetime. So he was like a brother, father figure to me.
Were you ever jealous of the love Jada had for Tupac?
Oh, fuck yeah.
I thought you were gonna say no.
Oh my God, that dude. Let me, and you know, and that was in the early days.
Yeah.
You know, they grew up together, and you know, they loved each other, but they never had that. You know, they never had a sexual relationship. But they had come into that age where now that was a possibility. And then Jada was with me. You know, so you know, Pac had a little thing on that. But she just loved him like he was the image of perfection. But she was with the Fresh Prince. I couldn't handle it. You know, I was the soft rapper from Philly, and he was Pac.
Right.
Yeah. No, I was deeply insecure, and just I wasn't man enough to handle that relationship.
So understand that traditional monogamous marriage is not bad. Traditional gender roles are not bad. They are simply not sexual polarity. Likewise, an unconventional open or poly marriage is not bad. It is also not synonymous with sexual polarity and alignment. These things are neutral. What people do a lot of the times is not the indicator of what's really going on, right? Now, it can be an outpouring of what's already going on in the relationship, but you can do these things from an abundance place, or you can do this shit from a place of scarcity, right? So understand, many people seek to have a marriage that is primarily for social reasons and security, while making the false assumption that because a marriage shouldn't be only about love or only about sex, that love and sex do not matter. And this repression, especially in the context of an individual who has been overstimulated due to their past circumstances, leads to duplicity. Now, Will did say that there was no infidelity.
Very candidly, it's a very famous story, infidelity in the marriage and how you navigated that time.
There's never been infidelity in our marriage.
Never been infidelity in a marriage?
Never.
Right? But understand this. In this day and age, it is more acceptable to have open relationships than before. So some people are simply not in love with nor have true polarity with their primary partner, but realize that it is the most secure, comfortable, and consistent relationship that they can come across. So they push the narrative that being happy with one person is a lie and not impossible, then seek to chase after dragons, which is just chasing, thrill seeking, right? Pursuing whatever thrills they can outside of their marriage or relationship to satiate their curiosity and lust that their partner, who they do not truly desire, is unable to fill. Now, if your partner can feel that to an extent, but you want to add on to that, and you have the boundaries in place, you have the structure in place, right? And you have that level of security between both partners, that's not something that's going to inherently hurt your relationship. It's something that can add to it. So I'm going to break this down some more. See, this typically will only work with an individual who experiences compersion, which is heralded as the peak of human emotions in many polyamorous circles, or an individual with the cut queen, cut cold, humiliation, or degradation kink or fetish. Why do I say this? Because in a situation where you're having honest communication with your partner, you need to assess how you would feel if your partner comes home and tells you they just had the best sexual experience of their life with someone else and you're not involved, right? Now, if you're having full open communication and honesty, how would you feel if they had that conversation? And how would you feel if that began to affect how accessible they are to you? Because what you need to understand is people have different relationships to sex, right? One person may be able to completely separate sex from emotions, and another person may have this sexual connection with the individual that leaks into their emotional connection, and then they form an emotional connection as well, and then you become less a priority, although you are supposed to be their primary partner, which pushes you into a position of being there primarily just for comfort and security, but not someone who they truly respect or desire. See, in the context of a primary partnership where they do not have the ability to prioritize the needs of their partner, if they have a new one, they are more excited about. This can lead to feelings of resentment on either side or neglect, where the only way to handle these situations is to have stricter rules, i.e. swinging, one penis policies, one vagina policies, casual outside partners without emotional connections, or unicorn hunting. This will falter in the context that the woman is internally seeking to replace her man versus adding to the dynamic, right? There's a difference between adding from a place of abundance versus seeking to fill your cup with other people. Because oftentimes when you seek to do that, you won't want to keep the person around, but the amount of time, energy, and affection, that new relationship energy, may sabotage the foundation of your relationship. Now, some people completely separate the sexual aspect from the foundation of their relationship so that they don't feel this way about it. But there is a certain benefit that comes with monogamy, or just true polyamory. True polyamory and true monogamy, one of the greatest benefits of it is the ability to mix sex with emotions and to let that strengthen the attachment that you have to an individual, right? When you're sleeping with multiple people, you can't have that so much, because if you experience better sex or a better level of chemistry with someone else, then your attention will be diverted there. And once that happens, you won't be able to keep up with your responsibilities and your duties, and the things that once were things that you enjoyed to do with your partner start to feel like an obligation, which leads to psychological reactions. It's the daddy versus father effect, right? So one thing I do want to say is that the modern idea that rules should always be 100% equal, or that whoever you engage with sexually should have all of the same rights and access to you, is not true. Now, that's a very prevalent idea within a lot of polyamorous circles and ethical non-monogamy circles. I'm not somebody who necessarily adheres to the narratives of those particular groups. I don't think that what's good for the goose is always what's good for the gator. Man or woman. Different people have different relationships to sex, right? So some things are more about the dynamic and needs of the individuals, as well as their abilities to meet the needs of their primary partner, as well as agreeing, than simply wanting everything to be 100% fair from a standpoint of psychological reactance. This is one point that I would disagree with the poly community at large about. So when you don't have what you want, or do not value and respect it, feeling restricted from other options causes psychological reactance to set in, but it can also occur when one is being socially pressured by a prevalent thought processes. I mean, just by prevalent thought processes in general, even if it doesn't benefit the relationship dynamic. These thought processes cause people to conflate leadership with tyranny and abuse. This is a very important concept to understand. This is where a social mindset of switching from a masculine submissive society to a feminine dominant society, this is where it occurs, right? Because remember, masculine submissive is transactional. Feminine dominant is whatever I feel in a moment. It's wanting to be in control from an emotional place, right? So sexual polarity is about the energy dynamic, hierarchy of motivations, and accepting of roles from a place of desiring and enjoying them. This is alignment, right? So what you got to understand is that when it comes to cup theory, masculine dominant and feminine submissive are the modes of operating that are from an abundance mindset. You have to be in an abundance mindset to be able to consistently operate within feminine submissiveness, and you have to be with the right partner who is in their masculine dominance, and you have to be within an abundance mindset to operate within masculine dominance, right? But when you're not there, when your cup is low, you have to operate from a place of masculine submissiveness. So masculine submissiveness will typically work different for a man versus a woman. Not always, but a lot of the times. So let's say a man is trying to leverage looks, money, and status. He's trying to give a woman social validation, financial compensation, and emotional validation in order to have access to her either sexually or to have this woman on his arm for social validation. And sometimes, these are things that tend to occur. Now, when that happens, you're killing the intrinsic desire and the intrinsic reward for whatever you're trading. So if a woman is with you because of what you bring to the table, you're killing her ability to be there with you because of who you are as a man, right? When a woman's having sex with you because of the money that you spend, she has to repress her sexual desire towards you in order to still be able to leverage that to get what she wants, right? And you're also killing your own sexual confidence, your own confidence in who you are as a man, and you're having a lot of unrealistic expectations, especially if not only you do that, but you want to make that a long-term scenario and then place the boundary or place the expectation of monogamy on an individual.
When I was 15 years old, my first girlfriend cheated on me.
Oh.
And I remember making a decision that nobody would ever cheat on me again. And the way I was going to do that is by being the biggest actor on earth.
Huh.
Right? So there's been this weird psychology that I've always felt like if my movies are number one, my life is going to work out great.
Huh.
You know? And like, oh, that's just
you
funny.
shut up.
Because just because they're doing something with you from a transactional point of view doesn't mean that they feel transactionally about it with everyone. So they may have to repress that when it comes to you, but they want to express that when it comes to others who they view as simply sex material. And sometimes that emotional aspect will seep into those scenarios. So one thing I do want to say is this: sexual polarity is not the final goal. Integration is. But it takes vetting, time, genuine sexual compatibility, non-sexual compatibility, accepting the role and polarity, and coming to the same page about the goals for the relationship. One of the issues with being masculine submissive is the propensity to be attracted to feminine dominance, which Jada is, displaying many of the traits of what I consider a sage burner. Right? And that's a very important concept to understand. Oftentimes, your sexual polarity will attract the opposite thing. So many times people will want to take a masculine submissive stance of wanting to be equals, wanting to cooperate, wanting to be transactional, whether they know it or not, and then be surprised, or where it's like the good girl's attracted to the bad boy, the good guy's attracted to the bad girl, right? Because it gives you a certain level of excitement.
I had to hustle. That's what my life was about, because there was a certain kind of lifestyle and way I wanted to live. I never wanted to depend on a man to take care of me, so I was in the streets selling drugs. I never wanted to be married.
Did you ever feel like Jada was ungrateful?
Hell yeah.
You have this internal level of submissiveness where you desire the validation or to be sexually dominated by an individual, right? And when you feel that way, masculinity is something that stifles submissiveness. So someone's going to have to be inconsistent, inconsiderate of your boundaries.
You know Esther Perel is coming to the table. She's going to be at the red table. Would you say she has been instrumental in you and I redefining our relationship?
I would say don't just start filming me without asking me.
Oh my goodness.
If you could film me.
Esther, come help us again, please. I'm still dealing with foolishness.
Because she don't just...
Would you say that she helped us heal the hurts that we caused between one another?
My social media presence is my bread and butter, okay? So you can't just use me for social media and not, don't just start rolling. I'm standing in my house. Don't just start rolling.
They're going to have to play the game, bait and switch you, or they're going to have to be abusive with you in order to put you in a position where you can tap into your feminine submissiveness, right? And also, when you're masculine submissive, you oftentimes use what you're getting from the other person to motivate you in life.
Family was winning, right? And there was a period where mommy woke up and cried 45 days straight. I think that's the worst I've ever felt in our marriage. I was failing miserably. But on the outside, I was winning. Like, I remember saying, I built this house for you. And she said, you built this house for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it was devastating for me to accept that I built the house for me.
Yep.
What I realized is I was building a picture.
Right? So aligning your life to be committed to an individual without being properly aligned in polarity is what I call premature integration. It is not impossible to fix, but in most cases, it will never be, due to power struggles, survival modes, further sexual polarity erosion, resentment, and the sunk cost fallacy. There's often too much hurt and resentment accrued during that time of premature integration to be willing to trust the other person in the correcting of those roles, and most people are too attached with their ego for certain necessary things to occur in the relationship. Like, there's something important to understand. And one thing that can be sometimes, if you're in a masculine dominant role, a woman ain't getting on your program, you got to demote her. But if you're too afraid to lose her, that can happen. You might be too afraid to lose her because what if she fuck somebody else? You have to be willing to deal with that possibility. Right? It's real shit. Sometimes a woman is not willing to give up the control and the leverage that she has to get into her feminine submissive energy, because she doesn't trust that the man knows how to lead unless she has something to leverage. Many men have too much natural masculinity and natural dominance, even if they don't operate in it regularly, to be able to truly be happy being feminine and submissive. And it's going to be difficult to find a woman who's masculine and dominant. Most women have an inherent level of femininity and desire to be submissive, even if they repress it, that makes them unhappy being in control in a relationship. So they'll resent their partner for being feminine and submissive. So while there are exceptions to this rule, it needs to be understood that while everyone has masculine, dominant, feminine, and submissive traits within them, in most instances, it is best for the man to take the masculine, dominant role and for the woman to take the feminine, submissive role as a foundation for integration. One thing to understand is that whatever role of polarity you may take will typically attract the opposite on a polarity level. So if you're masculine submissive, typically you will attract the feminine dominant, something I said earlier. See, Will Smith is a man that many women view as attractive, but due to some instances in his early life, this trauma caused him to take an approach to dating and relationships that benefited him in some ways, but hurt him in others, right? The two primary instances that come to mind were watching his mother being hit by his father at 9 years old, and from then on out, he conflated dominance with a woman as tyranny and abuse. And this is something that I used to be a nice guy. This is something a lot of nice guys go through. If you wake up, if you grow up around domestic violence, you grow up around your mother feeling hurt, you don't understand that there's a reason that she's there, and it's fucked up to say, but if part of her likes that, or she would just pick a man who was better for her. So you have this vilifying of leading with your dominance. Like I heard Will Smith say before, that laughter is what is the most powerful thing, and love is the most powerful thing. That's not something that displays you in a way that is respectable, right, by that woman that you encounter. So many men become nice guys due to not understanding the difference between masculine dominance and feminine dominance. Very important concept to understand. Just because you're dominant doesn't mean that you're masculine. Just because you're masculine doesn't mean that you're dominant. This led to him seeking the approval of his mother and seeking the approval of women in general, as well as repressing of at least being socially viewed as dominant individual or bad boy in the public eye. You shouldn't give too much of a fuck about what people think. You shouldn't. You should be who you are unashamed, right? And sometimes people will go in the opposite direction of saying, well, I don't care. I'm going to be a nice guy. There's a difference between being a nice guy and still being assertive, right? Now, he's assertive when it comes to his career, but you have to understand that oftentimes a person is masculine submissive in their relationships, or they're feminine submissive in their relationships. The role that you take towards your career in society has little to nothing to do with the role that you take within your relationship. So what I'll say is that this took out several tools in his belt, having a visceral disgust to certain scenarios in which he could assert his dominance, creating a desire to be an unconditional protector and white knight of women in his life, validating their toxic femininity at times by seeing it as giving them the freedom to be themselves and who they are while still having access to him, regardless of whether those actions will hurt him, his public image, or the relationship itself, seeing correction and punishment as inherently wrong and contrary to unconditional love, which he views as more important than anything else.
You can't punish people for mistakes. It's like you have to forgive people. And a big part of that, is forgiving yourself. We don't forgive ourselves for stuff, and it makes it impossible for us to forgive other people. That last time with Daddy-O, I just learned what love is. Love is not punishing people and beating on them for what they did and hanging on to that trifling shit, that they did to you. And it's like getting out of being a victim
you know? And Daddy-O and his death purified my heart in a way that I love life. Like, I love the opportunity to be better. I love the opportunity to work with people to find their way. And he helped me cultivate like an emotional invincibility. To love and to be loved is really all there is. And everything else needs to be set up to support that. You know, when you see things and you read things in the press and you don't understand exactly what's going on, just know that everybody in my life and everybody on my side and in my team and my wife and my ex and my children, what you're watching is an experiment in unconditional love.
With love comes correction. Now, I'm not saying he never does, because he gave a great instance of some time that he did.
Yeah. She cursed at me in front of 20 people at this party. She's like, Will, would you shut the up?
Ooh.
With Trey sitting on my lap. And I grabbed a newspaper and I said, bah! Can I talk to you in the other room, please?
Oh, and I was like,
Right.
this joker just hit me on my head with a newspaper.
We went in the other room, and I said, Jada, this is the deal. I grew up in a household where I watched my father punch my mother in the face. I will not create a house, a space, an interaction with a person where there's profanity and violence. If you have to talk to me like that, we can't be together.
Wow.
We're not going to use any profanity in our interactions. We're not going to raise our voice. We're not going to be violent. I can't do it.
Yeah.
She was like, well, you're not going to be hitting me in my head. I said, get out. She was like, wait, so you would break up with me over some words? I was like, yeah, I just did. I was like, we're not cursing.
Damn.
And her eyes welled up with tears. And she was like, okay, we didn't use any profanity in any argument. We never raised our voices. We took communication courses, all of that.
That's beautiful.
And we never had violence. We didn't raise our voices.
But what you have to understand is that if you view love as letting people be 100% who they are around you while having access to you, then something that can happen is sometimes you're meant to be in that leadership role. Sometimes you're meant to guide and protect and lead, to provide guidance to your family, to provide guidance to those people who are under your authority, and to guide them in a direction that's going to best benefit them. Not to try to divert them completely from who they are, but to tell them the best way of doing what it is that they want to do, and to not put them in a scenario where they feel that daddy versus father effect, where their desire is to rebel against you. And you can see this perhaps with his wife, and this started with his wife and it trickled down to his children. And this is something that you could see. Now, they still found a certain level of success with it, and I'm not sure how much he really has an issue with it. But you could see that Will was typically a little bit more of a traditional guy before he got with Jada. Right? His oldest son, you don't see a lot of these things in the public eye that you see with Jaden or with Willow.
With polyamory, I feel like the main foundation is the freedom to be able to create a relationship style that works for you. Also, doing research into polyamory, the main reasons why monogamous relationships or why marriage, why divorces happen is infidelity. How did you feel when I told you that I was polyamorous?
When you were like, hey, this is my get down, I was like, I totally get it. Wanting to set up your life in a way that you can have what it is that you want. I think anything goes as long as the intentions are clear. You know what I mean?
To everyone involved, and to yourself.
Really more to yourself than anything, right? And I know that there's a lot of beauty that sits outside of the convention.
Now, I like Jaden and Willow. I'm going to be honest with you. But you can also see certain remnants of that sage burner energy on them that they perhaps got more from their mother, and their father adopted it at times because he wanted to keep the peace. He wanted to have a peaceful home, right? So this repression often leads to pushing assertiveness into the shadow, which can cause it to become something that bottles up and takes control in some of the worst moments due to a deeply rooted feeling of emasculation.
Uh-oh, Richard! Oh, wow! Wow! Will Smith just smacked the shit out of me. Nick Mike's name out your fucking mouth! Wow, dude! Yeah. It was a G.I. Jane joke. Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth!
Right? As a man, you have something internally that says that you need to be in control of your environment. And when you repress that and act as if you don't care when you truly do, it could put you into a circumstance where, unless you have this humiliation kink, you may become a guard dog, right? An attack dog. Some men, they become rapists. Some men, they repress it to the point where they might, do a variety of things that would go outside of the box of who you would consider them to be, or who they would consider themselves to be. Now, something I do want to say is this. Many people are quick to attack Will Smith about his actions and how he has handled his situation with Jada Pinkett, but for many of the wrong reasons, and don't understand that he excels in masculinity in ways that they probably never would, projecting insecurities onto him that he may not have. And some people may think this about this video that I'm making. I'm making observations. This is from the outside looking in. See, I'm speaking from the outside in and don't know all the ins and outs of their relationship. All I can go off of is what I've seen and heard that they allowed to be out in the public eye. The open marriage was not the issue. Will has struggled with living his life for the validation of women in the general public for a long time, starting with the childhood trauma to being 15 years old and his first girlfriend cheating on him, then using that pain to motivate himself to self-improve, believing that gaining enough success would keep him from being cheated on, which is obviously not true. And when you realize that that's not true, you might say, well, there's nothing I can do to keep myself from being cheated on. And one thing that I'll say is this. Some people, this is Brodie's law. Some people always will, no matter what. Some people never will, no matter what. Most people are somewhere in between. Most people are somewhere in between. And one thing about his cup theory is that it places everything on the individual, right? Places everything on the individual person.
It is not your responsibility to make your wife happy, right? Just like it's not my wife's responsibility to make me happy. It's my responsibility to make me happy, and it's her responsibility to make her happy, and then we're gonna come together and build on that happiness.
And it's really a combination of both. You need to have enough in your cup to be in enough of an abundance mindset, especially if you're feminine and submissive, to allow the remainder of your desire for validation to be mostly concentrated into your primary partner, so that you don't find yourself in a position where you're more worried about social image, you're more worried about a bunch of goofy shit, right? It's a combination of both. It's not only caring about yourself, right? But it's also not only caring about your partner. Neither one of those is the positive thing, right? Neither one of those is the way to go. It's a combination of both. So if you're dealing with a woman, she has enough security within herself to where if you're not giving her validation in that moment, she could still self-soothe. But at the end of the day, you validating her, you making her feel special, right? You being able to set the boundaries and expectations, and her desiring your approval enough to get with that program and see your point of view is still important. You still want a woman who has enough in her cup, but it's still that. When you fill a woman's cup too much, she often gets to a place where she does not respect you, because you're filling her cup when she's empty.
What made you fall in love with him?
I would say Will came at a time in my life where he saw a beauty in me that I didn't see in myself at the time. And, he saw a diamond in the rough, and he kind of picked me up and blew off all the dust and said, I'm telling you, I'm going to make you shine, girl.
Well, you certainly did, looking at that rough.
Right, exactly. And I was going through a really rough time. And, he created a safe space for me to get healthy and to grow and to find myself.
Right? Instead of letting her do it for herself. She doesn't like herself. So when a woman's in a position where she does not like herself, if you like her too much, when she gets to a place where she does like herself, it puts her into a scenario, in a mind frame where she's like, well, if you liked me when I didn't like me, then when I finally do like me, why should I like you? And it's the glow up principle. And that's something that's very important to understand. See, for him, he lived much of his life being masculine submissive with women, leveraging his success, then having a woman who was willing to be with him, but over time was not truly impressed by his success, which pushed him further to be one of the hardest working men in the movie industry.
Family was winning, right? And there was a period where mommy woke up and cried 45 days straight. I think that's the worst I've ever felt in our marriage. I was failing miserably. But on the outside, I was winning. Like, I remember saying, like, I built this house for you. And she said, you built this house for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it was devastating for me to accept that I built the house for me.
Yep.
What I realized is I was building a picture.
And the entertainment business, and the entertainment industry in general, being the first man to win a Grammy, a rap Grammy. And I think he gave it back. I don't remember correctly. This man has an Oscar now. He's got a Grammy. And I believe he also has some other awards. I don't remember what those other awards were.
Okay. I'm not even going to go into the big blowout party that you had for her. You all read it here at will. That you laid down the red carpet. You had all the friends and then you all ended up literally, I think that was the thing that actually drove, there already was a wedge, but that 40th birthday party was the final moment when you said you were no longer gonna be in a relationship where you were trying to make her happy.
We agreed that she had to make herself happy and I had to make myself happy. And then we were going to present ourselves back to the relationship already happy versus demanding that the other person fill our empty cup. The problem is that when you come like that, the cup actually has a hole in the bottom.
Right.
So you pour all your good love in there and it goes out onto the floor.
Because you got two broken people here.
You got two broken people and that's what we're doing, you know? So there was a, you know, we just decided that you have to figure out how to be happy, you know? And it was a little bit more contentious from my side. I was like, you know what? You go figure it out. You go figure out if you can be happy and just prove to me it's even possible. Right?
Not thinking about your own self.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do me and you do you.
And you say, our time apart helped us both to discover the power of loving in freedom. We're simultaneously 100% bound together and 100% free. We agreed that we were both imperfect people doing our best to figure out how to be in this world joyfully. What does it mean to love in freedom?
The simple idea is you love in freedom with everybody except your partner. It's friendship versus marital prison.
Who?
So after Jada's 40th birthday, where she was not grateful for his efforts, he decided to relieve himself of the burden of seeking her validation and trying to make her happy. This took a certain level of being emotionally bulletproof because he had to give her the complete freedom to pursue whatever she believed would make her happy, then bring that happiness back to him. Now, the issue here is that when somebody does that and you make that as understanding, you make that agreement, you have to be able to deal with whatever comes with that. And Will Smith is shown by his willingness to stay and how he still seeks to protect her in the public eye, that he's been willing to deal with whatever came with that. He made that decision himself and he's had to deal with the consequences. And the consequences is her going and dealing with, you know, niggas like August Alsina, niggas who done put women in the hospital, knocking the bottom out that pussy, right? And he had to deal with that. And you saw the comments on the Red Table Talk talking about you didn't think I had the girth, right? So, and I'm gonna talk about this a little bit later, right? Well, while I've heard stories about them being in an open relationship as well as other things for much longer, and their kids appear to be following that same philosophy of seeking ultimate freedom and rejecting structure, I'm going by the narrative that was shared between videos, Will's books, interviews, and the Red Table Talks. In order for him to give her this freedom, he had to separate himself from the notion of mutual romantic love and what felt was untrue about the narrative to love her truly unconditionally, right? And allow her the freedom to do whatever may make her happy. This also happened when they were on the verge of being separated. Now, what I'll say is this: at certain points in time, he had to do what he had to do for his relationship because that was important to him. He doesn't believe in divorce. But another thing to understand is that it's best to do certain things when you're already in a good place in your relationship, instead of when you're in a bad place in your relationship and somebody may do more and more things seeking to see if they can get an emotional reaction to hurt you. That's something that a feminine dominant woman does. She seeks to test your emotional bulletproofness, right? She wants to test your emotional invincibility. So during this time, Jada was in a place of not having felt good in a long time. So she entered into a symbiotic relationship, a little bit parasitic, with August Alsina with the knowledge of Will, where she wanted to have fun with the young guy and feel good because she had not in a long time.
The large part of our relationship, monogamy was what we chose, not thinking of monogamy as the only relational perfection.
I actually sat down with Will and had a conversation. He gave me his blessing. I totally gave myself to that relationship for years of my life. And I truly and really, really deeply loved and have a ton of love for her.
And I was really able to do some really deep healing.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a joy to just help heal somebody.
Yeah.
Now, for most men, this is something that would hurt. Like what she said, I just wanted to feel good because I hadn't felt good in a long time. You know, that would hurt most men. But Will was able to take that because he had dealt with enough of her bullshit to be like, you know what, fuck it. There's nothing I can do to make you happy, so do whatever you got to do, right? So Will had to be conscious and aware of this and be emotionally bulletproof to this information. So she had her fun, took time to put money, sexual healing, and emotional care into August Alsina. This relationship was fulfilling for her and understood by Will. But there were some issues with it. Not being ready to be open about her relationship with Will, about the type of relationship she had with Will, while still benefiting socially from the perfect couple image that came with a lot of pressure. Right? So those rumors about them being in an open marriage has been out for years, right? And I think they've been trying to work and transition into being open about how they really move. Their kids are a little bit more open about their lifestyles, and I think they learned a lot of that at home. But something to understand about it is from the image that they had about their relationship versus what August Alsina said, there were discrepancies. And those discrepancies were things that caused issues. And from that perspective, we could say that even if they had an open relationship, the fact that Jada took this into the public eye and allowed this information to get out and didn't know how to keep her side niggas in the right place the way Will was, and able to keep his business out of the public eye, even being the much more famous and popular individual, this is what created the issue. It's the public embarrassment that came along with it, right?
I actually don't look at it as a transgression at all. And I was really able to do some really deep healing.
Mm-hmm.
It was really a joy to just help heal somebody.
Yeah.
And I totally gave myself to that relationship for years of my life.
Clearly, what happened?
And I got into an entanglement with August. That's what I said.
An entanglement?
Yes. Yes.
A relationship?
Yes, it was a relationship. Absolutely.
So by Will's admission, there was no infidelity. However, allowing that relationship to publicly humiliate Will Smith and take no responsibility for the hurt that it caused showed her own lack of emotional maturity, taking every opportunity to say and show her lack of respect and desire for Will in public settings, allowing people to disrespect her husband at every turn.
How do you put up with Will? I mean, really, look, you're intelligent and talented and successful and beautiful, and you have all of these qualities that, quite honestly, Will doesn't have.
Oh my God.
And I want to know how, after all these years, you do it. How do you do it? How do you do it?
Throwing him under the bus and not caring about how that would make him look or feel. Even in open relationships, there are still boundaries and ways that you show that you care for the public image and feelings of your partner. Perhaps then it has been more so, right? Like perhaps then even more so, right? Perhaps when you're in an open relationship, it's even more important to not only just communicate, but to take certain steps to make sure that things don't look bad for your partner in public, right? Unless that's a mutual agreement that they have, which is very possible, that maybe they wanted some of this information to come out so that they can get some more public buzz. That's also a possibility, but I'm just speaking from the narratives that they shared. See, part of the issue with Will wanting success to impress his woman was that Jada was always a woman who desired to be independent, and Will's success far eclipsing hers was something that caused her to resent him, not viewing his success as their success, but as his own. This caused her to feel that once her children reached adulthood and she started going through a midlife crisis, that she then wanted the spotlight to be on her, even at the expense of Will's public image. This has led to a back and forth cat and mouse game of distasteful public jabs disguised as quips of enlightened wisdom about transcending insecurity and ownership. Now, this is something that I see a lot of in polyamorous communities. I'm not going to lie to you. See, Jada would embarrass Will publicly Jada would embarrass Will publicly, and at first, Will would ignore it. But as he started to place a greater importance on his social media presence, controlling the narrative became more important. There were other, more in a vacuum moments ahead of then, such as her emotional attachment to Tupac versus how she spoke of Will publicly. But when they couldn't get on code for the red table talk about the entanglement, Will looked like the victim, and everything she had done and said afterwards further painted that picture in the minds of the general public. That's when Will could have run with it, but instead chose to divulge more of his personal business and reshape the narrative to protect his wife and get rid of the victim image. But many people already had their minds made up. He started to focus more on protecting and got into character to play King Richard, a masculine dominant man, and understands the importance of being emotionally invincible when it comes to his wife and family. Now, I do believe that Will was more traditionally minded than Jada, as she never wanted to be married in the first place, and being poly was more so her idea. And I also don't believe in protecting someone I can't tell to be quiet and sit down. But Will has his own standards and boundaries about the behavior that he will and will not tolerate. That being disrespectful communication directly to him, but he gives his wife complete freedom to express whatever she feels. His issue was simply choosing a woman who didn't feel the right way about him. A lot of things that they decided to do in their marriage is not bad stuff. Honestly, not inherently. But when you're dealing with a woman who doesn't view you as her first choice or the man who she truly respects and desires on a polarity level, where she's drawn to you on that level, with her body, with her mind, with her heart, where she's in love with you, then no matter what right shit you do, it's always going to be wrong. There's nothing you can do to make that type of woman happy because she doesn't want your ass, right? And that's one thing about cup theory. When you get a woman when she has a low cup, there's no guarantee that she'll want you when her cup is filled. So it may seem as if her cup is never filled, or she may never be happy, right? From the beginning, he loved her more than she loved him. She herself not understanding what love means in the context of him, but having felt a very deep love for Tupac. Their marriage is one they intend to stay in, or at least Will does, and truthfully, it may not be beyond repair. But something to understand is that when you don't lead with leading and dominance, and you often have to prove yourself to a woman through when you don't lead with the dominance, when you don't lead with making sure a woman sexually desires you on a high level, unless it's a woman who's just insatiable, if you don't lead with vetting a woman, you don't lead with making sure that she loves you more than you love her, but you still have a capacity to love her and grow into that, then you often have to prove yourself to a woman through masculine frame in the context of her doing and saying hurtful things. And, that's just real shit. When you don't lead with it, you have to prove it later. When you don't lead with masculinity, you often have to prove your masculinity through being emotionally bulletproof to the things that she does that are hurtful to you, because you didn't seek to understand her from the beginning. So you have to understand her through being able to go through a certain level of pain. And that's something that most men aren't going to be able to do, but some do, and they come out on the other side with a better relationship, right? So once he passes through the fire and he adopts a mindset that better values that structure of masculine leadership, and she gets to a place of desiring his validation, because nothing else she touches will last. If she doesn't leave, she will eventually soften her heart towards him, and they may reach a place of polarity and integration. Will has gone through a plethora of states of the sexual polarity quadrant, mostly being masculine submissive, then reaching a place where his goal was to be fully feminine and submissive, leading into the relationship from a feminine submissive stance. However, him being in alignment with being feminine submissive doesn't help if his woman is feminine dominant. This leads to a lack of overall direction and structure. She is still attracted to strength, so Will may go through a period of feminine dominance and eventually reach towards masculine dominance, and this will lead Jada towards feminine submissiveness if she has enough in her cup to handle it, and their relationship can be in alignment and stand the test of time, right? So something to understand is this right here. Will cannot be in a position of desiring her validation so much that he puts himself to the side, and he already made that decision, right? But he has to deal with the consequences of that. He led wrong, so right now he's dealing with the consequences of how he led. Sometimes when you're prematurely integrated, a woman is masculine submissive and you have to raise her up to feminine submissive. Or you can just leave. And sometimes a woman is feminine dominant. And it takes those opportunities for that woman to truly experience your dominance, but then to desire that, to get out of that psychologically reacting, independent woman mindset that's going to sabotage that relationship. When she truly experiences the pleasure of being submissive and feminine submissive with him, and from an intrinsic place, and they let go of some of this dipping off for a period of time, and they get to a better place within that, then their dynamic will change. And in the public eye, she will speak of him with more respect, with more reverence, right? He will not be as open to certain things, right? Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But this is their relationship. This is their life. This is just Brodie's take on it. I'm out.